Hello everyone and welcome back to another Strategoi video. We're here with the latest update and the last update for the Scourge of Ghyran. It's only Jonas once again. Ryan is still out and about, as I mentioned in the previous video, if you've watched that. But luckily for me, the last two videos were for the armies that I actually play. So I actually understand quite a lot about what's in this article. And I really want to take you guys through this one. Before we get into it, please let me know in the comments if I made any mistakes, and I am very curious to hear your opinions on this article, especially because I have some mixed feelings about what we're getting, and I'm curious whether you share my opinion or if you're having a different view on the whole charade here. Okay, so we're down to the Soulblight Gravelords. They are the last article, and surprisingly, we got the Corpse Guard and Sekhar. Two units that have not been played very much, so not that surprising, I guess. But I somehow was expecting a little bit more juice for Virkos or something, though I love to see Sekhar getting some support, supposedly at least, because that's such an iconic and cool model, at least in my opinion. And yeah, as you can see here down below, it's not too long before you get to pre-order General's Handbook 25-26, so that's probably tomorrow or Saturday. There you go, Saturday it's ready for pre-order. So that's gonna be interesting. But let's take a look at the two units that we get here. So the Corpse Guards, 80 points. The regiment options are the same, and Sekhar is 220 points. I think that's 10 points more expensive than her current iteration, and her regiment options are also the same. Okay, let's look at those war scrolls, shall we? So for Sekhar, we're looking at the same stat wheel: 6 health, 6 move, 3 up save, 6 up ward, and then 2 control score. Her keywords, Ryan also likes to check out the keywords before we get to the abilities. So I'm following his way of analyzing these war scrolls. Are also the same. She's still a 2-cast wizard, which is nice, infantry, and has a ward 6, as we already know. Now, as far as melee weapons go, I could not find a difference between her current iteration, so that's still the same. All in all, I think her melee profile is actually pretty neat. And in her current version, for at least the one that's in the battle tome, she's actually quite phenomenal in combat in a way, because she's very hard to hit. She has this ability, Serpentine Agility, and it basically makes you miss on a 1-2-4, I think. So only hitting her on 5s and 6s. And then you would probably get a lot of value out of her melee attacks if you get her to the fight at least. But yeah, now she's not got that ability anymore. No Serpentine Agility, no more spell. She had a spell that on a 7, she would have this bubble around her, and if one of your units was wholly within 6 inches of that bubble, your opponent could not target them unless they used the fight ability, which is kind of crazy. No shooting abilities, no magic stuff, so pretty neat. Though that spell was actually quite cool, I thought it was very thematic. I've never really seen her pop off in a list, and I still don't really feel, spoilers, I don't really feel that much has changed with this new version of her. Though just to clarify, you can still go with her older version if you prefer that one. It's just you've got some variation now. Okay, so what has she gained? She's gained 2 passives. And both are reactions, and they're actually quite cool. I just wish they were a little bit more flexible in a way. So we've got the once per turn reaction. An opponent declared a command for a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of this unit. You roll a dice, so a normal d6. And on a 5+, that command has no effect. It still counts as having been used, and the command points spent to use it are still lost. Really strong ability. Really, really strong. Were it not for the 5+. I mean, obviously, if you get to do this once per turn, that's both in yours and your opponent's turn. That's not great. That's obviously great, but on a 5+, it's gonna trigger, statistically, it's gonna trigger once every 3 turns, so 1.5 battle rounds. I think personally, I would have liked this ability much more if it was on a lower dice value, and maybe even just once per battle round or something like that. I just think it's never gonna be something that you're gonna be able to count on, right? And sure, your opponent has to do some counterplay to this, or has to at least keep it in mind. Like maybe their command won't work, and that might actually dictate certain commands, certain battle tactics. Think about how often you've really banged on that auto run to get you to a certain battle tactic. Now all of a sudden, if that unit is within 18 inches of Sekhar, it's not that clear anymore that they're actually going to complete that battle tactic. So there, once again, we get this really cool ability where I think the threat of it is stronger than the actual ability, right? Because your opponent has to keep this in mind, you're going to get more value that you might not notice from it compared to how often you're actually going to roll at 5 up. So it's a very strong ability, don't get me wrong, but for 220 points, there's got to be a lot more on this war scroll. So what else has she got? She's also got a once per battle round reaction, also triggered by something that your opponent does. When your opponent declares a spell or charge ability for a visible enemy unit within 18 inches, so not in a wildwood or something like that, you get to pick 1 dice from the charge roll or casting roll, and your opponent must re-roll that dice. That's pretty strong. And it's not on a dice roll, for you at least, not the ability doesn't trigger on a dice roll, and that's something I always prefer to, like the first ability that you've got here on a 5+. It's nice that it's a guaranteed thing that you can count on. That being said, re-rolling sometimes doesn't change things, and sometimes your opponent doesn't need a high roll anyway. If they're 3 inches away from you and you let them re-roll a 6, who cares, right? In most of the cases, they're still gonna get in, but sometimes it'll come up big, and once again, it's once per battle round, so I think it's quite easy to assume and fair to assume that you're gonna use this at least 4 or 5 times each battle, at least if she remains alive that long. Or unalive. I know she's undead, so and then you get this new spell, and guys, I really need your opinion on this one, because I feel like it's not really that good, but maybe you guys are like, Jonas, is a small techless-ish ability or something like that, but I'm just not vibing with it right now. So it's called Irresistible Demand. It's on a 6+, so generous. You pick an enemy visible hero that's within 18 inches of this unit, and then you roll your dice. And then you inflict D3 mortal damage on each other enemy unit within 3 inches of the target. So that basically punishes your opponent for putting units close to their heroes, right? Now, 3 inches is not a lot. And I think it's actually very, very easy to circumvent this. First of all, it's only 18 inches, and sure, 18 inches in this current format is quite generous for spells, but for a spell that then also has a different, very restrictive range on its effect, I think it could have been 24 inches, just to be a little bit more generous for the 220 points cost of Sekhar. All in all, this could obviously be very threatening if your opponent is surrounded by a lot of stuff, your opponent's hero. That's interesting. It also kind of punishes your opponent for having a bodyguard unit. So, and by bodyguard, I don't mean the honor guard special rule, because that's going away anyway. But I mean a lot of bodyguard units, like the Saurus Guard, for example, in Seraphon, or the Blade Lords from Lumineth have this rule where if they're in combat range of a friendly hero, they get a 5-up ward, and that hero also gets it. So that would be something that is punished by it. But then, even if they're within 3 inches, then they at least can take a ward save against it, right? So I just don't really see it. All in all, the war scroll by itself is very flavorful now. I think they've moved away a little bit more from she's a snake lady to she's an agent of Neferata. Neferata supposedly is this big spy master that plays with the human kingdoms and has all these diplomat vampires spread out among the human realms and the mortal realms. So we kind of get that flavor from it now, and I like it better just because I'm the sort of person that people like to hate on, because I love those kind of mind games, but I still think the abilities aren't amazing. That being said, she's a 2-cast wizard, so usually you're already paying, let's say, 150 for that. So adding another 70 points on top of that war scroll for all of these goodies is actually pretty nice. And now you have a reason to push her forward. Her melee profile is still pretty decent, I think. It was the same. It is the same as it was before, so she's still good at that. And now she's a little bit more vulnerable, though she still benefits from guarded hero, right? Or she at least can't be targeted by shooting abilities if they're more than 12 inches away. So she's at least safe from that. I think it's interesting. Both scrolls seem good, but there's a reason why they're not picked, right? And that's just because, well, first of all, you've got so many named heroes in your army, and you're like, do I need another one yet again? That's one. Well, secondly, personally, I'm not vibing very hard with the spells either from our normal spell lore nor our manifestation lore so far. So you might not want a 2-cast wizard per se. And then thirdly, it's 220 points that you can spend on other heroes that usually reinforce your army. Sekhar now is not so much a reinforcement but she's rather a scare tactic, right? She's there to play tricks with your opponent, and that's actually so flavorful for her. So definitely give her a go. I think she's interesting in a vampire-esque army. I actually started with that army back in Warhammer Fantasy just because I love the idea of having a vampire unit at some point. I'm still waiting vampire infantry units. Apart from, the Azarkan blades, we still haven't got a regiment or a squad of the trustworthy and decent vampires. And by trustworthy, I mean you can trust that they give you some value damage-wise, for example. Not so much with what we've got right now. So Sekhar, interesting, but not necessarily something I'm super hyped about. But maybe I'm not seeing something that you guys are seeing. So please let me know what you guys think. As for the corpse guards, well, they've added a second ability and they've changed the weapon profile a little bit. So it went from 2d6 to d6 plus 6. That's a nice change. I think no one can complain about that. It's strictly a buff. And the abilities have changed a little bit. So before that, I don't actually remember what its ability was. Oh, it gave you crit auto wounds on your dead walkers. Yeah, that's it. And so for your zombies and your doggos. Now they've added 2 completely new abilities. So the first one is Unholy Lodestone. Pick a friendly deadwalker zombie within this unit's combat range to be the target, so 3 inches. Until the start of your next turn, while the target is wholly within 12 inches, so that zombie unit has to be wholly within 12, its Mindless Ferocity ability inflicts mortal damage on a 5 instead of a 6. Basically, that means the zombies have an ability called Mindless Ferocity, where if one of the zombies dies on a 6-up, you get to deal 1 mortal damage to a unit within 3 inches. Now you get to do that on a 5. Is that a good ability? I mean, sure. If you've got a 40-man zombie unit, you're dealing 13 mortal wounds on average. That's sorry, what am I saying? 40-man zombie units. Am I right here? Yeah, I think so. 30 man. Yeah, 13 mortal wounds, which is phenomenal. But then you need to have lost your entire zombie unit, and you still have to roll those 5s. But it's cool. I think it's strong. I like how they keep trying to make zombies cool again. There was a time where they were just too good, either because their point cost was too cheap or they had these amazing abilities to do mortal damage. Now they're kind of giving us that back a little bit. So there is definitely some interesting play here. And keep in mind, you can still go for the old corpse guard version, but you cannot combine them. So that would be amazing if that was possible. That would actually be really cool for this specific unit. then you've got a once per turn army ability, end of any turn, so both your opponent's and yours. You pick a Deathwalker Zombies unit within 12 inches, wholly within 12 inches and not in combat, and they can move up to 3 inches to do a pile-in move. And you can move that unit into combat. Of course, that's pretty neat. It's a very cool ability. It's cool for objective play. I still fully expect to go to an edition where we're interacting more with terrain pieces, because that seems like an obvious move from what we've seen from the spoilers so far. And then 3 inches might actually be what you need. And being able to move into combat is also a very neat trick. You can pin down a unit. They can't move out of you without taking damage, or they can't even charge then if they don't want to move out of you. So that's interesting. Is it interesting enough to pick this unit? I mean, sure, it's only 80 points, guys. So if you're bringing zombies, why not? That being said, are you bringing zombies? Maybe you'll be encouraged to do so because we've got some more juice for them. Not necessarily for them, but you could juice them up a little bit more with some of the stuff that we get above these war scrolls. Overall, I think it's an improvement from what we had before. I like this corpse card iteration much more than the previous one. You're not so much dealing damage with the attacks of your zombies, but you're much more easily dealing damage with their abilities. And getting some movement buffs on them is always neat, is always good. So yeah, I like this one. I think you'll see them if you're bringing zombies, but that depends on whether you bring zombies or not. All right. On to the battle formations then. So before we already had 4 battle formations. We had the one that allowed you to use Deathly Invocation 1 extra time. We had the one that the Bacchanal of Blood that gives your vampires +1 to cast and +1 to wound rolls. There's the one that allowed you to pick 3 Deathwalker units, so either zombies or wolves, and they either got to make a pile-in move if they were in combat. If they were not in combat, sorry, or they got to deal mortal wounds on a D3 roll on a 2-up. And then the last one was something that buffed Death Rattle units if they charged and if their unit had fewer models than the target opponent. You got +1 rends on that unit. So yeah. I personally am still defaulting to the Bacchanal of Blood. It's something that just gives so much value. I like to have a little bit more of a guaranteed cast, or at least a buff to my casting. And the vampires love the +1 to wound rolls as well. Deathly Invocation, I never really chose for my lists. The 3 Deathwalkers pile-in move and such is interesting because you have a ton of those abilities throughout the different armies. Seraphon definitely has one. I think Warriors of Chaos also has one, or that might have been in an older version. So that's always nice. And keep in mind, if you combine that battle formation with the new corpse card, they're actually piling in 6 inches instead of 3, which is a lot. And then the Death Rattle one, it's good because we just have so many nice Death Rattle cavalry units now. So that is interesting. But again, it's only if you had fewer models in your unit. So how often that actually triggers, I've yet to play with that one, but it seems sort of okay on paper. Now we've got 2 more. We've got Crypt Masters, and it allows you to give a 4-up ward to one of your cursed sepulchers, but you can only do it in your own hero phase. And I really wish it was just any hero phase, and then I think I would really like this one, because so much of your abilities are depending on so much of your battle traits are depending on the cursed sepulchers, and they're not that difficult to kill. And sure, there's some ways to return them, but very few ways to return them. So giving them a 4-up ward until your next turn, so potentially for 2 turns even, is pretty neat. But I wish it was just for a turn, and then any hero phase that would give you some flexibility, and it would actually make it valuable enough or interesting enough to be comparable to the other stuff that we get. But so far I'm just weighing everything against Bacchanal of Blood, and I don't think this is winning from Bacchanal of Blood so far. Depends on your list and on how we're gonna play GHB 25-26, obviously. And then we've got Skin Shifters. This one I really, really like. So once per turn, army your hero phase. So once again, only once, not in every hero phase. You pick a friendly infantry vampire hero to be the target. The target can move up to 12 inches and has fly when it does so. It cannot end that move in combat. It's really cool. I think right now it doesn't look like much, but again, we're moving towards an edition where movement is going to be even more key. I think that actually might be interesting. That being said, do you even have enough points to include vampire infantry heroes in your list? I mean, Sekhar is one, obviously, so you could push her forwards or backwards if you want, obviously. But there's so many good cavalry units now that have arrived with a new book that you really have to look at your list and figure out whether it's even worthwhile. The cool thing about this one is that it's in the hero phase and not in the movement phase, and that makes it pretty valuable because that actually adds 12 inches to your casting ranges if you want to look at it that way. My biggest frustration with a lot of spells is that they're pretty short range, and I don't feel like our spell lore is super strong because of that short range. But now you're adding potentially 12 inches to that, because keep in mind, guys, you can move 12 inches forwards. You'll be in range of an opponent's units. You cast your spells, and then you can just do your normal move and teleport backwards or move backwards. So that is definitely interesting. I really like stuff that lets you move outside of your movement phase, especially if it's flexible, like you get the fly keyword and such. So that's interesting. I think it's up there for one of the three coolest abilities coolest battle formations that we've got. I don't necessarily rate Crypt Masters that much, but Skin Shifters looks very cool. Man, I'm sorry I'm tripping over my words so much, but I'm pretty hyped, and then I start talking too quickly, so maybe I just have to slow down a little bit. But yeah, Bacchanal of Blood is probably still my go-to, and then I might actually want Skin Shifters. It really depends if I have enough vampire infantry heroes in my lists. As long as I can take the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon for a couple of more months, I might not be bringing Skin Shifters. But otherwise, it's interesting. Okay, and then onto some heroic traits. So we got a different heroic traits table. So you either choose one of your heroic traits from this one, or you choose from the table that's in the Battle Tome. Now keep in mind, there will be a rule in the new GHB that lets you buy new battle traits, or now a different battle trait at least. But for now, we assume that it's still from the same table. So we got three new ones here. The first one is actually very difficultly worded, but it's not that difficult. It says whenever you heal one of your units that was damaged, it just automatically heals at least 3. So if you're rolling with the Hunger, for example, and you heal D3, if your roll is less than 3, you heal up to 3. So you just push that number to 3. Here it's worded differently. You have to subtract a roll from 3 and then add a couple of more heals to that so that you reach 3, but basically it just means you always heal 3. Unless you roll higher. I don't know how you would do that. Maybe with Vordry, for example, he used to have that ability to heal a little bit more than that. I'm not actually sure whether the new Vordry has it. I've yet to play him. Okay, but yeah, interesting. I don't think you'll be going for this, especially if you compare them to the other heroic traits that we had. We had, just to clarify, we had the good old favorite Lash of the Sire on a 2+, a unit nearby got to move D6 inches or make a piling move they were in combat. Amazing. You could literally use a Necromancer and Lash Nagash, for example, and have Nagash move D6 inches. It was always a little bit ironic to me that you could use it that way, but it's an amazing ability. I love it. This table has to be really good for me not to want to pick Lash of the Sire. Then you had Unbending Will. It did plus D6 to target's control score, I think. Not that great. And then you had Unhinged Rampager, which let you re-roll charges for that specific unit. Again, it's interesting. There is some synergy there with a couple of our new cavalry heroes. And if you're still running the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon like I am, it's also tempting on that. But still, movement is won usually by... games are won by movements. So the Lash of the Sire is just way too good. And I don't think Frightening Vitality is outperforming Lash of the Sire for me, at least. Then you've got Immortal Ego. This is actually the same ability that we saw on the Sylvaneth preview from yesterday, but it's just rebranded with a different fluff text. So each phase, you can reroll 1 hit roll, 1 wound roll, and 1 save roll for this unit. Now, obviously, in and of itself, this ability is only impactful if you've got units that would love this. And it's actually really neat on, once again, the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon if you're still running it, but also the one on Steed. The Vampire Lord and Steed is also loving this. The White King on Steed is loving this. So there are actually some pretty good targets for this one, I feel. And it makes this heroic trait stable more interesting because of it. And then you've got the Wastrel and Vagabond. While a friendly Deathwalker zombie or Death Rattle Skeletons unit is wholly within 12 inches of this unit, at 2, I feel like that has to say 2 inches, 2 run rolls for that unit. Oh, 2 to the D6, sure, yeah. Add 2 to the run rolls for that unit, so you move D6 plus 2 now. Or add 3 to the distance that unit can move when it piles in. Well, it's and, obviously, but you don't do it in the same phase. That is nasty. Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing here? There's some really cool shenanigans. So you remember that pile formation that we had that allowed 3 Deathwalker units to pile in, or if on a D3 and a 2 up, you dealt that much mortal damage. So now, with the extra pile in at the end of their turn, they don't pile in 3, but they pile in 6. And then if we scroll down to the corpse cards, you've once again got the wording here. The target can move up to... Dang. I thought it said pile in. I don't know why. Maybe because it just made it easier for me to remember. I thought you could double up on it once again. That would have been really nasty. I was like, holy hell, are you really moving 12 inches now with your zombies? Are you back to the good old zombie spam lists? Okay, no, sure. But still, it's 3 plus 3 plus 3. If you've got the battle formation, and you have your normal pile-ins as well, obviously. So you're actually moving a lot. You're covering a lot of distance with this one, and this makes it a little bit more interesting then. But it's still, the problem is it still has to be wholly within 12 inches. So difficult if you're moving that much, but this is a really strong ability. Please do not underestimate this ability. It's very scary. It also works on skeletons, which is nice. Skeletons so far are okay-ish. I feel like they're more of a screen and a filler right now, but zombies are somewhat the same. But they're trying to give this juice back to the zombie spam lists, and I think there is some play here. I'm not sure whether you still want to go full-on zombie spam, but yeah, this is scary, you guys. These guys are gonna move real fast if you want them to, and the pile-in stuff is gonna be really scary. So sure, I think Immortal Ego is fun on a martial-esque hero and is good with Bacchanal of Blood, for example, because then you're also adding plus wound to your wound roll. So I mean, the chance that you're gonna do you're gonna do a lot of damage are pretty big. Or if you're going for this spam version of a list with zombies and skeletons, this is also pretty neat as an ability. But keep in mind, wholly within 12 inches, so it might be difficult to get the constant value there. So yeah, does this compare well to the previous table that we had? I feel like the previous table only had one good ability, one good heroic trait, and that was Lash of the Sire. And if you're just bringing the one heroic trait, I think you might still want to go with Lash of the Sire or Immortal Ego, maybe, if you want it on your martial heroes. But once you're getting to that point where you're buying a second heroic trait and you're looking at Unbending Will and Unhinged Rampager, which are both not really interesting abilities, the Wastrel and Vagabond become much more interesting. But then only if you're bringing zombies and skeletons, obviously. These two actually pair very well with a vampire list, and these two would actually work well with a zombie or skeleton list. So there is something to be said for this table, definitely. I think it's interesting. And I love how it's not completely outclassing the new one or just completely worthless compared to the old one. Sorry, outclassing the old one or worthless compared to the old one. It's just a great alternative, right? It depends on your list. You've got more options. Choose what fits your list nicely. And I feel like it's the same with these two battle formations. I still don't really like Crypt Masters in a lot of cases. Though if you're unsure on what to bring, this is always going to give you some value, I suppose, if you're a little bit of a noob list builder or a super pro, obviously, and you see some secret sauce here. That might be useful, but the speed of death I really like, just for the spellcasting potential and teleporting and capturing and moving around. And it's just so good. It's really cool. But it's only for infantry vampire heroes. So the infantry keyword kind of, neuters it a little bit, but it's still pretty effective. All in all, I'm quite happy with this article, actually. I don't necessarily know whether I will be running Sekhar in my competitive lists, but I love the flavor for her much more than her old one. It just never made sense for me how she was harder to, or it made stuff harder to hit or something like that. I understood it with the Serpentine agility, but I didn't really understand it with the spell. I suppose she had these infiltrating units or something that were made it harder to hit your units, something like that flavor-wise. But you get much more of that mind game feel in the game, at least, just because you're mind gaming your opponent with her. So that's cool, but not necessarily something that I'm definitely bringing, because I'm already spending so many points on heroes. And if I'm building a Soulblight list, you're usually bring at least one martial hero, right? So Vordry or Vampire Lord on Steed or Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. So that's one slot, and then you're bringing one support piece. And White Kings on Steed are so good right now that Sekhar has to be really important in your list for you to want to bring her. Unless you're going with 3 drops, which is totally fine. If we get some sort of reward for that, I just keep wishing that list building gets changed in the new JHB, but I'm not optimistic about that so far. The corpse card, all in all, seems just like a straight up buff. There's really no reason to bring the old one. The auto wound on zombies was weak, to say the least, because you had no rent on them. At least now you're dealing mortal damage on an easier dice roll. Wow, difficult day for me today for my English. And the end of turn movement is just nice with all the other end of turn movement that you've got in the book and in this update. So yeah, I think as a Soulblight player, you're probably happy. Please let me know in the comments what you think about this update. I really need some advice on Sekhar, you guys. I want to use her. I'm playing the Yvrain model from Eldar as her, because even though I love Sekhar's model so much, it's just a little bit too expensive for how little I play Soulblight right now. But I just love my vampires, and if she's worthwhile in your opinion, I would love to run her. So let me know what secret tag that you're coming up with. I think the corpse card is good as long as you play zombies. Obviously, that's a given. The battle formations, all in all, both are interesting. I don't really see the reason to bring Crypt Masters unless you're banking on bringing in a lot of reinforcements. And then the Undying Tyrant's heroic trait stable is also pretty interesting. I think all of these abilities are actually pretty cool and interesting. So yeah, all in all, I would give this article a 3.5 stars, I think. Maybe even 4. It's definitely not up there with the 3 worst ones. Sorry, ogres. You're still stuck at the bottom. GW just does not seem to love you as much. as it does the other armies. So yeah, Soulblight players, let us know in the comments. And if you're not playing Soulblight, also give your opinions. Are you dreading coming up against one of these war scrolls or abilities? Stay tuned for more information, because Ryan's back tomorrow, and he might put out some info with the new, because there's a little bit news on the points and such. So yeah, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and if you want to chat with us personally, you can obviously also do that in the Discords. See you guys in the next one. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye bye.